Welcome to Unmuted Nation, and this is the fifth day of the Black Man Hear Me series. I'm Alex Haynes, and I've got two gentlemen here to talk through this last day with me, Xavier or Professor X, and Alan Campbell. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing good.
Great. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. All right. So the basis of this series, and for people that have been following along, whether you've been listening, watching it, is really to give Black men the space to share perspective, thought, and emotions. And what I found over the last 4 days is that we are all different, just like everyone else. Actually, the first point is we are actually people, and I think that in dealing, I think people know, like if you say, oh, is a Black person a person? Of course they know that. But I don't think that they think that we are as nuanced and complex as everybody else. And so sometimes that gets overlooked in the way that we react, or in the way that mostly in the way that we're presented. So I think that my hope is that this gets into the hands of young Black men, even older Black men that have never been able to express their thoughts, and gives them the space to do it, at least within the context of this program, but also with their friends, with their family, uh, spouses, children, because it's important that that happens. So, and it's been a unique week because I haven't talked to a lot of people that I know, and it's really interesting to find the perspectives, and the way that we are shaped. I think that um, we are not monolithic, and so none of us are the exact same. But there's valid reasoning for the way that we respond in the workplace, the way that we respond or grow or screw up relationships, and even the way that we like handle our family and friends. So without dragging that out, Alan and X, I know both of you. Alan, I've actually known you since I was 18. I met you
That
in
long?
college. That seems like a long time ago. And literally showed up in this place. And for me, it was shell shock because I grew up in Georgia, but not in this part of Georgia. So I'm not really small town. And I don't even know if you could consider where we went to school a small town. But like we met there, did more than we should have probably. And so now it's been, I don't know how long it's been since I've seen you, but it's good
Yeah.
to see you. Thanks for being a part. And X, we met now. I mean, it's almost over a decade as well.
Yeah,
So
man.
totally different setting, but we've done good work together as well. And I respect the minds of you both. And I think that my hope is that people will understand where you're coming from, and maybe start to understand people that they interact with because of you being here. So we'll start with you, Alan, if you want to just talk about where you're from, how you grew up, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. No problem. Thanks for having me. So, I'll start off where I'm from. Kind of get some background. I'm from a small city called Dixie, Georgia. Probably never heard of it. You've probably heard of Thomasville or Valdosta. But growing up in a small city kind of shaped my mindset, and it helped me be more expressive growing up because you didn't see a lot of African American males doing things. I was fortunate enough to have two great parents. They kind of paved the way for myself, my brother, and my sister to kind of instill in us that hard work and that dream that opportunity is never limited to your geographic region, but it's more than that. So they kept us traveled, they kept us exploring, reading books and things like that. But growing up in that really small town, I was exposed to a lot of things, racism, including systematic and physically in your face. So it was times where, it was one of those sundown cities. If you know what that means is when lights go out and it gets about 7, 8, 9 o'clock, you shouldn't go to that town. And so
Yeah. I didn't
growing
even
up,
I didn't even know that town still existed.
yeah,
Towns like sundown towns existed until I moved to Georgia, and to
yeah.
hit about that as well.
Yeah. And that's kind of my upbringing. I mean, from there, I went straight to Columbus, Georgia, and kind of just distanced myself from then, just moving farther and farther away from the South. I guess I'm still in the South, but more rural South. And now I'm in Atlanta. So since I've been here, though, I've been giving back more, starting nonprofits and things like that. Really going back to that community and giving back to those kids that might be inspired to do more than what I did and help them and help that next generation pay it forward. So that's all what I'm about. And that's kind of shaped my life.
Very cool. X, what about you?
So my name is Xavier Brandon, but everybody knows me as X or Professor X, depending on how we met. I hail from Charlotte, North Carolina, by way of Brooklyn, New York. So I'm from the North, but I grew up in the South. I moved to Atlanta in 2006 for college. I went to Morehouse, and then from there I went to Emory. And I've had some interesting experiences with race. I was in Miami for a summer, working, teaching like 8th grade algebra to some students, and I've been followed in malls. I've been stopped by the police after Obama's inauguration, coming back to Georgia for no apparent reason. Because I'm tall and I'm dark skinned, I have a deep voice, I have a beard. I'm often looked at as a threat or intimidating, although I'm pretty cool and down to earth.
Mm.
I come from a single parent home. My parents divorced when I was 4, so that shaped a lot of my life. My father was in and out of my life a lot. And my mom was a strong Black woman. So those who grew up in that type of situation already know what it is. I am very passionate about youth, young adults, college students, millennials, and helping them figuring out what their purpose is, propelling them into their destiny. I come from a ministry background, music, DJing, rapping. I'm a radio producer. I do a lot of different things. I'm a father. I'm a husband. And so for me, the community is very important. Black people is very important to me. Our stance, where we fall in line in the place of society. Like Alan, of course, suffered systematic and physical racism. And I'm just trying to change it. You know what I mean? And so I thank you, Alex, for presenting this platform for us to be able to talk about some real stuff that are really touching us as not only Black men, but Black people. And prayerfully, this gets to the masses and encourages somebody through this.
No, dope. So definitely, I appreciate those intros, and I appreciate you guys just sharing that. I think context helps, right? I think people, like I said, when they make assumptions, they just don't know what they don't know. For me, like Alan mentioned, coming from a sundown city, I had never heard, like when I moved to Georgia, I moved to this Disneyland area because I moved to Atlanta, but I moved around all these people. So there were like white people. It was very community oriented, but it was well known around the Black people there. The first thing they said, like, these counties around here, you can't be there after dark. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember being young and my mom was tripping. The realtor kept taking her to subdivisions named Plantation. And where we're from, like, just a,
Yeah.
I don't care if it's Blossom Plantation. I don't care if it's River Plantation. Plantation is not somewhere. And I remember her literally saying this I'm like 8 or 9. Like, she's going off. Absolutely not. Why would you bring me here? And she's not even realizing that people here are just so desensitized, or in Georgia are so desensitized to, and they've just modernized it and made it, a lavish place to live. But it carries so much pain, and it carries so much. So even before we jump into like how we're affected by all of those things, one question I'd like to ask, and just the context is different, but based on, like you said, you came from a single parent home, X. Do you feel like, and I'll start with you, X, that you ever felt the pressure to grow up faster than you should have, or grow up faster than you needed to because there was a need for you, or out of obligation?
I think, of course, I felt pressure. I'm also the oldest of 2, so I always had I have a younger sister who's 2 years younger than me that I've always had to look out after. My mother, because my father wasn't around, kept us in church and put me in situations where I always had to be a leader. So I was always out in the forefront. I was always having to like be a person that people looked up to. So it was always this like, whether it was vocalized or not, there was always this pressure to make sure I was on my P's and Q's, make sure that I was not acting crazy, wasn't doing anything wrong. I remember a certain conversation we was on. I think we was on a road trip, probably like coming back from South Carolina or something like that. And my mother, you know, like when you young, you don't really understand how everything works. And so I'm sitting here listening to my mother have a conversation. She's talking about white people and just like all this different stuff. And I'm on something like, yo, why can't we all just get along, kumbaya? Like, what's going on? And my mom blatantly said to me, she said, Xavier, one day you gonna realize that this world don't operate that way. It don't look at you the same way. You know what I mean? And at the time, you know, I shrugged up. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? But that joint stuck with me. So when I got older and I started to see how people looked at me and how they navigated around me without even knowing me, they prejudging me based off of my look. I'm also very hip hop. You know what I mean? So the way I talk, the way I move, and because I'm a New Yorker, you know, I'm not as
It's very. I'm trying my best.
hello, how you doing?
I'm trying my best for that to
Right,
me not sound
facts. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know what I mean. So you know, you already know. You in the city, you know what it is like. And so because of that, you know, people already had this preconceived, you know. So I had to grow up real fast. I had to make sure I knew what I was doing, where I was going. You know, looked at how things, especially when I went to college. When I came to Atlanta, you know, going to Morehouse, you're just engulfed in this like Black culture and from all types of arenas. It's not just like, you know, they hyping you up that you're great and all this stuff. They're also like schooling you on like, hey man, like this is really what's going on out here. This is really how they feel. You know, I think around that time Gen 6 was going on, you know what I mean? So there was all this type of Gen 6, Obama coming in, you know, there was a whole bunch of like Black political activism going on at that time that really like shaped and molded me. So yeah, definitely had to grow up real quick. You have to, man. As a Black man, you got to grow up quick. You don't have opportunity just to sit there and breeze through life, you know? So.
Yeah. What about you, Alan?
Definitely
You
that.
know, pressure like I've got to grow up or I'm needed.
Yeah, so my father he passed away when I was 8. So after that, my older siblings, I'm the baby. So my sister's 10 years older than me and my brother's 7. And so by that time they were, you know, in college and had graduated college. So it was just me and my mom. And I'll never forget when it kind of hit me that I had to grow up. Our house was burglarized. And we lived in the sticks, literally like dirt roads. So the contractors, the insurance, it just took a longer process for us. And I started not going to sleep, staying up, and trying to be like that man of the house. And ever since then, I never felt my age. And it shifted again for me probably in high school when I first realized what code is. And so I'm trying to get jobs, and you know, I'm used to just kicking it with my friends and going into these job interviews, and my uncle set me aside and he was like, you can't go in there with the same demeanor that you have with your family. You got to switch it up. And so that was kind of the first time I experienced code. And it's funny listening to, you know, his story. It's so many things that you can tap into to explain how you grew up faster than what the average kid may have to, because it's just so many aspects that you can't even think of. And like, even just that coding part, that's a huge piece that even I deal with now. And now it's called executive presence. So it's always something that you gotta kind of figure out and navigate. And you got to be older than what you are. And it's tough. It's really tough.
You literally have to, and you make this is a decision that has to be made, because a lot of men don't make this decision. But if you want to, like the way that society is built, you either make this decision, you have to tell yourself either, and you have to live two realities. Like, you know, you have to carry yourself a certain way to even attain acknowledgement. Then you have to carry yourself another way to attain some respect. So there's
Mhm.
layers and
Talk
levels
about
to
it.
it, and nothing is innate. And so I think that this is a huge part of understanding the thoughts and the minds and even the actions of Black men often. And this is a reality that we often live in that other people don't. I can say that boldly. White people don't live in that same. They don't live the same reality. And me growing up, when I hit North Atlanta when I was 10, and it was literally like I left like all these Black people, and I didn't even know there were so many white people. I just did not know what was going on. And where we ended up living, we were upper middle class around a lot of really, really uppity people. And so there was a perception, because I lived in a house, like there were Black people around where I lived, that I lived in a house. And so we were treated in different ways than the Black people that lived around that were in apartments. But a lot of these people were there on transfers, playing sports, and there were so many underhanded things that I didn't even start to see until I got 16, 17, 18. And I saw it, especially in my last high school. They transferred and they drew the lines to exclude apartment complexes. And I remember my parents discussing it, like they were disgusted. There was nothing they could do about it. But these lines were drawn to pretty much create a private school in a public school district. So inside of that school, and it only lasted for a year, ended up getting rezoned. But inside of that, you saw like the makings of like the ultimate prep kid, from fencing classes as electives, like just on some other. And I'm like going to school, and I come to school one day my senior year, and written on the building is "nigger suck."
Wow.
Spray painted on the building. Brand new school.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's kind of like shell shock, because I got to school so early. You know, there was only like, I think maybe 39, including the Latinos, like minorities in my senior class of a class of 500. So we were not. And so to see that, and it was this is the George Bush era. So our principal was like, you know, united we stand, and we stand to like, do not call Fox 5. They were just not trying to get that publicity at all. And, you know, I was still Alex then, you know, really like, this is an issue. I brought this issue to everybody. I made it known to the principal, to the teachers. I told my parents, I will not be walking in that building today. I can't do that. Like, I can't. Where am I? Like, how is this going on? And the way that it was just kind of swept under the rug, it was nothing. And the second piece, and I don't say this a lot, but I remember my teachers basically assuming, and this is when I started to see it. And I remember telling my mom, like, I don't know if we should have ever moved here. She's like, you know, I'm 17, 18, boy, what are you talking about? I moved there, and the thinking is, I moved here to give you a better life. What I found is that and this is not for everyone, but if you move to an affluent Black area where Black teachers care about your Black kid, that's important, because these white teachers really don't. And they can't care for them the same way. They just don't have the abilities to. So I remember being like, my mom was really into education. So she made me apply at the end of my junior year to 8 schools. I didn't end up going to any of those 8 because they wanted me to go somewhere I didn't, like, long story. But I remember going, my counselor, you know, your guidance counselor checks in with you. I walk into the guidance office, and she doesn't even acknowledge me at all. She's just looking at her computer. And I knew that she knew I was Black. She said, well, we don't know mom and dad's financial situation, so have we started looking at community colleges? And she says this to me while, mind you, I've already got 3 acceptance letters. So I'm like, I don't need to look at community colleges. She's like, well, we don't know mom and dad's financial situation. I'm like, hold on. Like, I know, like, I'm already in. And I had gotten, at the time I got into Clark. That was one of the first schools I got accepted into. And I said it. Mind you, we're in North Atlanta. I said Clark. She's like, I said Clark, Atlanta. She's like, where's that? I don't even think we need to have a conversation. And I was at that point, you know, I was probably becoming the off the cuff Alex at that point. Like, man, this conversation is over. But I remember that distinctly at that same school, nigger stuck on the school, and these messages of rejection are hitting you in different ways. And I'm just dealing with it because I'm starting to recognize that this is what life is going to be like. So I'm either going to have to make my own path, because there are perceptions made, before I even have the opportunity. So in your experience in having to grow up a little faster, or feeling that pressure, do you think that it's caused you to react or not act on certain things, like not choose to do certain things because you did you stop doing certain things early because you were already kind of cognizant of who you were, or did that change that behavior at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can speak on it. I mean, I think that takes me back to high school, and there are situations like you said, that plantation thing that kind of resonated with me, because where I'm from, there are 13 active plantations, and there were times, yeah, it's a lot of heritage behind that where I'm from, and I mean, it's so much to the point where vice presidents come down there and they go quail hunting seasonally, like it's like a tradition. But that's a whole nother story. But I think what it hit me in high school is that you can't react to everything. I mean, I didn't have the verbiage in front of me like Alex was explaining, but what I did have in front of me were things that were divided, right? So I remember there were times where kids in 4-H would come to school with guns on the back of their truck. When fights broke out, different races would go to their cars and get their guns, and like the school just kind of didn't really acknowledge the dangers involved in that. And that was kind of before like all those school shootings.
What's crazy is this is the post 2000 era.
Yeah,
You're in high school post 2000, and this is still like this is what you were going to high school with, and like people don't even know that exists.
The problem with that is that I was the class president, and so I couldn't react the way I wanted to react, because my job was kind of like to unify everything, and I couldn't always speak on how I wanted to, but it taught me a lesson. Like, you can get more things accomplished by kind of gathering everybody as a unified message, instead of just being like, okay, you can't be militant every time. There are times where you can be militant, but there are times when you need to unify and bring everybody together, because you can create a stronger message that way. And those type of situations is what taught me that. And I remember seeing that, and like how I would react when I got home and people were tearing down signs and stuff that were being made. And it was just a lot of tension in the school. And when you're in positions to make a difference, you have to act accordingly sometimes. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you just are tired. Kind of like the feeling that we have now with the shootings. You're just tired, and you want to act, but you got to do it in a way where it's impactful. So it's a tough navigation sometimes.
Did you just a question for you? Did you ever have the opportunity, because as a class president of your class, you're feeling this responsibility, you're feeling like you can't react, and you've got to be an example here, but did you ever have the outlet? Did you ever have time to talk to somebody? That's a lot for somebody that's in high school to have to carry and to have to deal with. Were you ever able to like share that with your mom, or share that with the family member, or like, this is crazy, this is what I'm feeling? Or was it just something you had to accept and move forward with?
It motivated me, and I would channel my anger differently. And so it made me motivate myself in my academia world and just how I express myself. So like, even with the shirt that I have on now, like I would wear stuff like that to school. And when I was questioned, it's like, oh, is that Black power? And I was like, you do understand the fist is for impoverished people. It's like to unite people. It's not just for Black power. It's for unilateral people who are like they're oppressed. So it would be like an educational moment where I could talk to people and they would understand that you just can't come at me any type of way and just trying to box me in. But I never truly had expressive outlet like we do now, like on social media, where you can say things and get your thoughts out without being ridiculed. So we didn't have that in my city. It was just too limited, and it wasn't there, quite frankly. But I did it in other ways that helped me and propelled me.
Sure. X, growing up in North Carolina, what type of did you ever feel like, because you said you're really optimistic, like why can't we all just get along? You know, listen, love brings us together. Let's do this. And I mean, I know you, I know your heart. What type of experiences did you have in North Carolina that, because I imagine, like, when did you move from New York to North Carolina?
So I moved from New York to North Carolina when I was 4, but I was always going back and forth to New York for like summers and winters for breaks because my family is up there. So I spent all of my school in Charlotte. So like for me, Charlotte ain't have nothing. You know what I mean? I was ready to get up out of there at any point. Like, you know, I didn't have a choice in being in Charlotte. You know what I'm saying? So it was just as ratchet as everywhere else. You know what I mean? Guns, shooting up parties, you know, same that we all have experienced. But for me, I started rapping when I was 12 to be able to deal with my anger. Because, you know, when you young, you raised by a single mom, your father isn't around, you want him to be around, he's out there with other people, like you get upset. And so, you know, I knew there was either two options, either me, you know, fight, which I could have, but then I knew like the consequences wasn't going to be beneficial for me. So there was a show called the Lyricist Lounge show that used to come on MTV. And I looked at them one day and I was like, oh, I can do that. So I started rhyming. You know what I mean? First started poetry, then started rhyming. And from there, that kind of helped me get out my anger and stuff like that. So, which is why Atlanta was such a premier place to come, because Atlanta was booming around that time. You know, Jeezy just dropped Trap or Died, Tip dropped trap music. Like Atlanta was bussing. Like I was like, yo, I gotta get it. I gotta get down there to get out, so I can at least do something with myself. And so for me, my racial issues started to come once I got older. You know what I mean? When I started invading white institutions, that's when, you know, I really was faced with some stuff. And you know what's crazy is that dude in high school named Teddy, he was mad cool, right? You know what I mean? But it wasn't until I was older that I recognized this man used to ride around with a Confederate flag on his truck every day. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't, you know, yeah, I'm like, yo, that's just Teddy. Like, you know what I mean? He cool. He ain't raised, you know what I mean? But you know, until you start understanding, yo, why the Civil War was the Civil War and what the Confederate flag means, you know, and then when you're driving, even where I am now in Dallas, Georgia, man, I drive past Confederate flags all the time. Like I'm living in Trump country, you know what I mean? And so it's real crazy that when you go into these institutions, whether it be academia or Alex, you might know about this, whether you're in these evangelical Christian spaces and you are very pro-Black African disciple, like you start to see life from a different perspective. Like, you know, you start to analyze things and you're viewed a certain way. So if I say something, I'm very direct. I don't like having to go through different channels to get, if I got a problem with you, I'm gonna bring it to you. It don't work that way in those places. You know what I mean? You got to go through 5 different people and they want to talk about you and you got to talk to your manager and then you got to do all this stuff. And I'm like, yo, why didn't they just come speak to me? Well, you know, they ain't know if you was going to be if I was going to smack them, you know what I mean? That's what you think of me. Like, I mean, maybe I could, that was an option, but you know what I mean? That's not necessarily have to be the first. Yeah. I definitely thought about it, but that doesn't have to be the first thing that you think about. But I come off scary.
I thought about it. I think,
yeah, what makes I come off scary, but you the one lynching people, but I come off scary. You know what I'm saying? You're running up in schools and terrorizing people, but I come off scared. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the oxymoronic nature of our nation and our country, is that, you know, Black people are demonized, but we are not causing most of the problems in America. You know what I mean? So yeah, those institutions, because those are systematic.
Yeah, and I think that there's so much just systematic and systemic racism there, I will, there's pieces of me that will never leave. And so I know that there's no way that I can address it all. I do have times, where it's frustrating. I'm going to ask you guys a question in a second, because I want to think about like your general reactions or general interactions with people that are not Black. And then I'm going to specifically ask about your general interactions with people that are white. And I think context is everything, right? I think, and we've already talked about this. Sometimes you, like me, leaving this lily white Duluth, Georgia at the time. I think I don't even know if it's still white like that, but leaving that and going to Columbus, where literally it's like 50-50. Columbus is like the only place I've ever lived where I know that the other population there, so it's probably like 43. There's not that many. It's literally like white people there and Black people there. And I remember like I could get where I grew up, it was about my family name and just how you carried yourself. All of that mattered. And I remember, and I've always been a talker, so I could always talk my way out of things. I didn't have a lot of really crazy reactions. I remember the first time I got pulled over, the dude looked at my last name. He said, "You play football?" Of course. He's like, "Okay, all right, slow down." And then it's just that. My interactions, I wasn't even, mostly my issue with the Duluth police is they're going to call my parents. And most Black people don't grow up in that, like, they're going to call. I'm not going to jail because where I live, you take my son to jail, you're going to have a problem. You might lose your job. And it's crazy. So I moved to Columbus, and I carry part of that with me, part of that confidence. Like I have a friend that she always says that her goal is to have the confidence of a middle class white man, and she says that all the time. Like that's my goal. I want to have the confidence of it, and I'm like, okay, I got you. But I bring that with me, and like I remember I think I had my first police interaction was like a ticket, but my first police interaction was on the campus of Columbus State. And I probably thought about this once since it happened. And I was like, when I moved there, I was just like excited. I was doing whatever I could. I was all over the place, all over the place. But I remember having an interaction, and part of my problem being all over the place is that people knew my name. So I would just do things, and all of a sudden, there's a problem. I'm in somebody's office. I was always causing problems. But I remember I was working for this company, small company. First rule that I probably broke. I'm in this rural Georgia area, and I'm working for this small white company. I probably broke the like 7th rule of being a Black man. Why would you do that to yourself? But I remember leaving and really pissing off the lady when I left. And I was like, okay, I just need my final check. And I remember, Alan, I actually think I got you to take me to get my last check from this lady. And something told me it's usually not wise to just bring a group of people to a place of business, but something just told me, like, we rode to get this check deep. We just rode deep. Get the check. The lady told me that she wasn't giving me my check. Basically, that I needed to give her a 2 weeks notice, just kind of like BS the entire way. So I was just like, whatever, I'll leave, go back to school. I get a call from the school police department. They tell me that they found, I think I had lost something the week before. They tell me they found it. The next thing you know, I am inside of an interrogation room on campus. They're questioning me and asking me where I went today. And they asked me if I assaulted this lady at her place of business. And I'm like, no, I worked there. I went to go get my check. Like, I'm so blindsided because I'm surrounded by police officers on campus, this little police station, and it's literally like across from where our CAF was. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I went to this racist one, and I'm thinking to myself, I had to be 19. Like, this is insane. The next thing you know, they're like, well, we're gonna have to take you downtown. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, for what? And they walked me out of this building in cuffs. And it just so happens, because it was near the CAF, like, and where in Columbus, everybody was nosy. We were all nosy.
Yeah.
But you could see me. It's just like you see me walking. Had it not been for the fact that Alan took me and we were really deep in that car, they see me being escorted to this police car in handcuffs. And like I mentioned this interaction because you don't forget the details when you're placed in cuffs for no reason at all. So we get to the car, Alan ends up walking over, asked the police officer what's going on, and we had a different type of boldness then. But the officer's like, he's saying whatever, he's like, well, were you with him today? Like, son, were you with him today? Because you can be in cuffs too. Like, that was the demeanor. Like, all of y'all went up there and assaulted this woman. He was like, I was there, but there was no assault. So at this point, there was like, I wasn't truly under arrest. They were just trying to coerce me into going with them based on a he said, she said, but now he said. So the officer sitting there like trying to figure out what to do. He's like, now tell me what happened again. I'm telling her, like, I quit this job. I went to get my final check. They weren't answering. They weren't responding by email. I went to get the check. He's like, well, son, it looks like you're gonna miss out on this one. Don't go back up there. They let me out of the cuffs. And I remember that entire day. I'm like blown. Like I can pull myself together, but my mind, why did this happen? How did this happen? How could something like this happen off of the strength of just one white woman's word? Because if I call the police and tell them that somebody came over here and assaulted me right now without proof, that's that. That's the end of that. And so that kind of shaped my perspective. That was campus, like a place that I'm paying you people to be educated here and treated this way. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. Do you remember, or have you had a time that you had an interaction, an unexpected or unintentional interaction with the police, whether it was de-escalated or not? Do you have a time like that?
Yep. Mine was in Columbus as well. And it's pretty funny because I was living on the north side of Columbus, which is, I guess, supposed to be better. But I was living in Hunters Run apartments, and I was coming home just from like one of my late classes because I was working part-time, paying my way through school or whatever. So I remember coming home, it was about maybe 9-10 o'clock, and I got pulled over. And I remember thinking to myself, why am I being pulled over? Because I was not speeding. There was, it was nothing. It was a normal night. And so I got pulled over. And what surprised me was it was an Asian police officer and it was a white police officer. So they both approached, and, my dad and my mom always told me, let down all your windows whenever you get pulled over, the normal speech, right? So I let everything down. And the only question that they asked me was, is this your vehicle? Now, mind you, I had a Dodge Durango in college. I wasn't driving like a Lexus or Maserati or anything. It was just a Dodge Durango. And I looked at the guy, and he's almost like he's trying to provoke me. And I was like, yes, it is my vehicle. And I had to provide all this proof. And I gave it to him. They came back. Then the next question, what are you doing on this side of town? Sir, I live here. This is my apartment. It's right up the street. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I was boiling inside because the questions were really just insulting. But on the other half of that, if I'd have lost my temper, there is anything could have happened. This was before camera phones, really. I mean, I worked at a cell phone place, and we didn't have like this camera video type, proof that we have now. And I was like, man, just calm down, keep your composure, because this can go left real quick. And, I stayed there. I kept my hands on the steering wheel, and, after a couple more questions, they let me go. But I remember I was just like, why did that even happen? And another part of me was like, the other guy is a minority as well. Like, why is he even letting this happen? He just stayed quiet the whole time. So that was kind of like my first interaction. That happened maybe 2 or 3 other times, but that was the first. And it was just shocking, man. Just the bait questions that they were asking me to try and piss me off. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and it's the first time you remember the details of the first time, because it's like, okay, you're really examining yourself. especially if you know, like the first thing that comes to your mind is what your mom and dad told you, or what your parent told you. This is what I know to do. This is the right thing to do. Plus, I know I'm not going to be disrespectful. I want to live, so I'm already saying just you're regurgitating what you know to be right. And it still feels like the pressure is like, what, like, why is this attack happening?
Right.
It's just hard to get past that feeling in that moment, but you have to. X, what about you? Have you had an interaction like that, or like a confrontation with the police officer?
Yeah, man. Again, college, January 2008. I'm pretty sure it was the 23rd because my birthday was the 22nd, and I was in DC for the inauguration of President Barack Obama. So we're coming down. I'm in Georgia. I have finally made it to Georgia. So I'm in Georgia, and when you ride down 85, there's that long stretch of just land, and so I'm driving. I got me and two of my boys with me. We're packed. I'm driving a silver Kia Reno. Okay. I see the cops, right? And I know that I'm a speeder. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to work on it, but I know I'm a speeder. So when I see them ahead of me, I'm like, nah, we gotta chill, relax. You know what I mean? So I'm going the speed limit. You know what I mean? Then I see a cop come up behind me. So I'm going hella slow. I'm nervous, you know what I mean? I'm a black man. Inauguration just happened. I'm pretty sure cops are not happy that a black man is the president. You know what I'm saying? So, they put the lights on. I pull over. Just like Alan said, I know the routine. Roll the windows down, get your license out ready, and stuff like that. So I come, he comes up, gets my stuff, and then he's like, can you step out the car? I'm like, cool. You know what I mean? My boy is up. He's like, yo, just relax, chill. Like, it's going to be all right. I'm like, all right, cool. In my mind, I'm just nervous about the ticket. Like, I ain't got money. I'm a broke college, so I ain't got money to be paying no tickets and stuff like that. Have my insurance run up, let alone what you could be doing to me. So I get out the car and he starts like, yo, where you going? I'm going to school. I'm going to school. He's like, where you coming from? I'm like, I'm coming from DC, the inauguration. You know what I mean? I'm like, he was like, inauguration. I said, yeah, Barack Obama just became president. You know what I mean? I'm like, I was there. Like, did you watch it? He was like, I don't even know if he answered me, but he was just like, okay, y'all going to school. I was like, yeah, we're going to school. And he's like, the Reno, it's like a halfback. So you can see inside, you got pillows, suitcases and stuff like that. We ain't got no, we ain't trafficking and nothing like that. And then he was just like, okay, cool. And then he was like, all right, keep it moving. And I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm grateful, but at the same time, I'm like, you just stopping me for no reason. Like, and I think that was my first experience of driving while black. You know what I mean? You hear the stories from, again, your OGs, your parents, your uncles, your cousins, and they tell you about this, but you don't really know what it's like until you actually experience it. For no apparent reason, no ticket, no my registration, none of that was off. They just stopped me just because you see three black men in a car driving through rural Georgia, and so I've always had to, have that type of, keep your head on a swivel type mentality. Even just like Alan said about the plantation stuff. When I was working for this white nonprofit, you know what I mean? They would take us to these plantations. Now there's only me and my mans. We don't about white people. And I used to always tell them, like, yo, we go somewhere where it's not black people, I'm with y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they would laugh and joke. I'd be like, yeah, y'all think it's funny, but I'm serious. Like, anything go down, I'm with y'all. You know what I mean? Because anything can happen. You know what I mean? You, like I said, you see Confederate flags riding. The good old boys are still out. You just never know what could happen. And so it's like, but white people don't think about that. They don't think about the type of trauma, the type of things that we have to deal with when we make a decision and how we move and how we got to hold ourselves together for them. You know what I mean? We got to present ourselves away for them so they don't feel threatened, so they don't feel scared. Nobody cares or thinking about like, what's our mental health situation going, like, what is going on? And why is my heart beating out of my chest? Why am I so nervous? You know what I mean? Because I've seen and heard of cases like Rodney King's and, others that people died out here. You're right. This is pre camera phone.
Yeah.
Sounding old out here. Pre-camera phones,
I mean, we can
you know
go
what I
back to
mean,
like
Facebook Live.
we can go to February with Ahmaud Arbery, and
Fact.
this man is jogging, and I don't really care if he was jogging. I don't care what he was doing. He was just out. Like there's nobody else that has to be prepared that way. And I think that even though we are prepared that way, there's so much that goes through you at that moment. You can never be fully prepared for the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what, when you leave today, you're hoping that you come back, but you don't know. And there's no way to know. Do you think that those first interactions with police kind of shape the way that you carry yourself?
Facts, big facts. They definitely do. Like the way, not here's the thing, like you are already conditioned again by your parents or your mentors or life society, how the police are off rip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then you encounter them, and so your experience is already so you put that what you've been conditioned with your experience, and then you put all the stuff that's going around because of the social media era where you're seeing people literally gunned down in your face, and then the news is running it 50 times over and over and over again. So whether it's Ahmaud Arbery or Breonna Lawrence or Trayvon Martin, or the list can just continue to go on. You're conditioned to think and live in fear and anxiety and trauma over and over again. So yeah, it's like you can even have police people in your family. Like I got an aunt who's a detective. You know what I mean? I love her to death. She would look out for me and stuff like that. But you got that experience with her, and then you got like 5 experiences with other police officers that don't have that same type of love, that don't. And the worst part of it is that some of them be your own kind. Some of them look just like you. You know what I mean?
Well,
Who
I
will
don't
treat
think
you
the
the
bias,
exact same way.
although there is a racial bias, I don't think the bias is limited to white people. I think when it comes to police officers, I definitely think there is white bias, and there is a space to say white racial bias is a problem, and it's something that we deal with, and it's something that needs to be addressed. But on the flip side, I also think when it comes to police officers, and I'll say this all the time, it's black police officers with bias, white police officers with bias, Alan, your experience, Asian police officers with bias. Because of this color of skin, you must be doing something wrong. If I probe long enough, there's something there. And even knowing your rights, even being empowered to say, oh, you know. And I think that's the flip side that's hard, right? We teach our children to protect themselves. We teach our nephews and nieces to protect themselves, not necessarily state your rights, because your rights can still have something happened to you that you didn't prepare for. So I think, Alan, has it shaped the way that you kind of interact, carry yourself?
Yeah, I definitely had a trauma, just like my man said. The trauma is there, and it's deeply rooted. I mean, I would be lying to myself to say whenever I'm stopped or I encounter the police that I'm just completely calm. That's never the case. But one thing, since I've had a son, is I try not to pass that trauma to him. And so I've made it my point to make sure that he's engaging with positive images with the police. Now, I still educate him. I'm not going to send him out there unprepared at all. But I just don't want him to have that trauma that I have and that a lot of us have, that we experience all the time. But I mean, it's hard not to see it. And because he asks questions every time he sees, the media, the hashtags. I mean, we went to the Million Man March in DC. I took him, I think he was maybe 7 or 8 years old. And we all had hashtags on our shirt. And, I had to explain it to him, why all these hashtags. But I try to pay it forward, man. But that the trauma is real with us. And it definitely impacts how you interact with law enforcement, just in general. It's always kind of a distrust. You question everything. Like, is this a backstory to something else? Like, is this a plot? It's never fully on. Like, I just trust and believe in you. And that's sad because they're here to protect and serve, every race. And if you don't have that trust in them, it's just always a bad situation, man. Always.
Yeah. Before we take a break, I want to ask this question. Do you think that trauma, it's interesting that you brought that up. Do you think that trauma whether it's protection mechanisms or distrust. Do you think that trauma transfers itself into other relationships and other interactions with other people?
Well, it could. It could. I mean, I would say that it carries over into just social conversations. I mean, we all probably are social on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. But even in how you interact with people, you're always thinking from your point of view of distrust, and they may not be. And sometimes, you know, that carries over to cooler talk at work, or it could be anywhere. So I definitely think it spills over into different relationships.
I feel it. X you?
Yeah, I definitely do. Excuse if y'all hear drums in the background. My brother-in-law is a producer, so he's doing his thing. But yeah, definitely, I feel like trauma definitely does transfer from place to place or person to person. Because just like Alan said, like if you have a certain experience, you're gonna look at certain people, certain things that type of way, right? Same way as if you get heartbroken, right? You get heartbroken, you think every woman break your heart the same way, so you put up these defense mechanisms around you, regardless of where you go, and it influences how you interact with people. So I think so let's say authority. Let's just talk about authority in general, right? If you got an issue with authority from your parents' perspective, then you're gonna have an issue with authority when it comes to the police. You're gonna have an issue with authority when it comes to government officials, when it comes to, principals or administration or your boss. You know what I mean? Because like whatever experience you have has now shaped you to think that authority is this way and this is how I need to interact with them. You know what I'm saying? Until you have an experience that's counter to what you have experienced. That's the only way you're going to be able to probably hold the two in tension to be able to say, okay, well, this time this experience was good, but this time the experience is bad. Does that mean all experience is going to be bad? Maybe not, because how could I justify this experience over here? You know what I'm saying? But for the most part, yeah, I think if not checked and if not dealt with, it definitely will transfer to other places.
Sure. Yeah, I think I probably want to explore that a little bit more, because I think that these all of the experiences, right? Our childhood, the way that we're conditioned to interact with police officers, that's a conditioning. Then how we feel after that happens, and not really being able to express that in any way. It's something that you have to deal with, especially if you have a family, especially if you have kids. You got to keep it pushing, because you have to be there for them. So you don't really have time to address this trauma. You don't really have time to unpack and dig into why you're feeling this way, or why it's still on your mind 7 days later, and you're paranoid every time you go somewhere. Like, I don't know if I want to leave. I don't want to be driving at night. And but you have to run. You got to handle things. You got errands. You have to run, and you have to keep living life. So these things impact us in so many ways. I think that we talked about the trauma, like right before we wrapped, and about how in so many ways that trauma can be addressed. And I think X, you alluded to the fact that you could address that trauma and just don't let it run rampant. And Ellen, you kind of alluded to not necessarily making your trauma the trauma of your son's trauma. And I think that that's a key piece of it as well. I think so many times it doesn't just translate though into relationships. It kind of translates into day-to-day life. So like as you enter the workplace, and your interactions, depending on where you work and who you work with and how you work, and it rears itself everywhere. Let me not diminish like profession, and it only happens in these professions or in these types of jobs. It happens in the church, evangelical circles. It happens in corporate America. It happens in retail America. It happens. It happens everywhere. How do you feel like, or have you ever felt like I kind of share for me that small job that I had when I was it was like one of 15 jobs I had in my 2 years in Columbus. I was literally doing them. I think back and just like I was doing the most. I probably just needed to slow down. But that experience taught me, like, I was now cognizant. I don't want to work for nobody's white company owned by the white husband and white wife. And that's how specific I was because of that situation. I don't like that white woman literally, and this was what happened to me. That white woman she accused me of assaulting her, and her employees were standing behind her. So why would I deliberately put myself back into a situation? And I think about it like that. Have you ever had a situation that kind of lingers into what you do or into your work life?
I'm gonna defer.
I mean, I'll speak.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go, Alan?
Oh,
Go
No,
ahead.
no, I'm saying you. You got it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I think for me, again, going into so when I worked for this company called Young Life, it's a Christian-based nonprofit, and that was my first time really working for like white people in that type of space, like a white evangelical Christian background type situation. And you know how I am, Alex. I'm real bold, Afrocentric, militant, you know what I mean? But I'm a good dude, but I'm about our business. And so I was really myself all the time. I didn't turn down for anybody and for no reason. And all of a sudden, every time like I said something or I vocalized something or I might have said I was unapologetically black, or some white person would be getting offended talking about what would you do if I said I'm unapologetically white, you know what I mean? And then my response is like, you get to be unapologetically white every day. Yet this whole country is built on you being unapologetically white. You don't have to turn down, or I remember when the Black Lives Matter movement was really going on and Cat was taking a knee, and I was talking to a bunch of college leaders and there was this conversation about where should we stand, how do we move and stuff like that. And I told him, like, we need to be standing. If you care about us, if we caring about all kids are black, you know what I mean? We need to let them know that your leaders believe that Black lives matter. You know what I'm saying? We need to stand for that. You know what I'm saying? And all these white people would come up to me, they start confessing their guilt and their trauma and all that stuff to me and stuff like that. I'm like, all right, cool, that's cool. We'll do something about it. Like, use your privilege and do something about it. And I think but the problem is,
I know you said those
right. You know what I mean? And the thing though is that sometimes they wouldn't come to me, they come to like a black area to me, and a black superior guy sit there and talk to me. And so for me, now I'm looking at this man like, yo, are you the house dude? Like, what's up? Like, you not in the field with us? You not out here in the struggle in the trenches? You working for them? Like, what's good? I'm looking at you, and then I'm looking at y'all like, yo, y'all so fake and phony. Like, why can't y'all just come to me like a man? And you're supposed to be godly and sit there and have a conversation. Last time I checked, scripture said if you got an art with a brother, you go to them. That's last time I checked. So I'm like, yo, what's going on? And so for me, that type of mentality has made me be less trustworthy or open to those of the Caucasian persuasion, because it's like I thought you can't be trusted. Like, you'll stab me in the back, you'll sit there and do something. So whenever I'm around, I'm not as open, I'm not as friendly and stuff. Because I'm like, yo, I know the moment I do that, you just gonna find an opportunity to politicize or capitalize or pretty much hijack anything that I got going on for your own gain. Because we see that in all types of spaces, you know what I'm saying? Like, as in the word of Black Panther, we got to watch out for these colonizers, and that's real. And maybe that's a bad thing for me to say, you know what I'm saying? But I
just feel like it's an honest thing to say. I feel like it's raw. I think it's a true, that is a true, like, I'm smirking a little bit because I know that you've said all of these things. I can imagine. I can imagine that. While I have probably said most of the same things, I am mostly in because of what decisions that I've made and actions that I've made. I'm mostly in Black spaces, these days, and I find ways to kind of share what my past is, so I can tell you what you're walking into. You can't, and I kind of use. I feel like everything that I've been through has been somewhat of a training ground. Like I feel like every experience that I've had, I can use it and turn it and teach, because there's no way, like, I'm not putting myself back. Like when I sit here, and this is part of the reason that this dialogue is important. I'm glad that you were just brutally honest with, this is where, like, it's hard for me to trust. You say, we say, and we sit here and profess the same faith, but you're conniving and trifling and all of these things in Jesus' name. So I get what you're coming from. I totally understand that. I feel like part of that, I take that and I don't mind teaching it. I don't mind sharing it. But I sit as a product of Atlanta, like a product, and I say publicly, I think Atlanta is probably the most pro-Black place in the world, in America, because while the world may see like Black Hollywood and the United people call Black Hollywood, what you see growing up as a kid in Atlanta is you see Black doctors, you see Black dentists, you see Black teachers, you see Black mayors. So what that says to a Black child, like it says to every other child that sees this all the time, is that there's nothing that I can't be. I love that. That's somebody that I've been gone from Atlanta. It's now I'm headed into 4 years. It's crazy that it's been so long. I mean, that time has gone so fast. But I sit and look, and I'm thinking that, like, with what, as I've continued to evolve and continue to grow, and I know where I was there, probably because I was in so many Black spaces, I just was like removed from the possibility of just being, the next hashtag. But I sit and look, and I watch like legislation, and and we'll kind of go there. But I sit and I watch that, and I'm like, yo, I had plans. I thought I was gonna go back home, but how could I deliberately bring myself back to a state that, like, look at the news over the last month. What the hell? So I think, and I think that's where I am. Alan, how about you? Have you seen that has that trauma ever followed you into the workplace in any way?
It's two instances that I remember where it followed me into the workplace. One, I used to park cars at parties at some of those plantations in high school, and it wasn't anything that anyone said to me. It was the imagery. And at those plantations, I never willingly went on any of them, but the party was there, so I was there. And I remember seeing shackles on like doors at the party, and I was like,
shackles,
"Is it
like slave shackles?"
Yes, that's the immediate thing that I connected with. And I was like, "Do I understand heritage? I get it. I'm a very neutral person at times, but what part of the heritage are we just going to continue to keep to just oppress a whole other race? Like, why are we continuing to say that this is a part of a legacy of a plantation, or this is my ancestors part? When are people going to stand up and say, okay, I am not racist, but my grandfather probably was? Like, and we don't need to continue this legacy of this heritage. Like, we don't need to have these shackles on this plantation door, on multiple doors, in order for this to be a plantation going forward. Because nobody's living there. What's the point? And so stuff like that, man, is kind of what I saw then in high school. And then fast forward to college, there was an incident where some money went missing. I was working for a cell phone company, and it was about $20,000 went missing. And I swear, I got questioned. I feel I got questioned more than anyone. And at that time, I was balling in college. I mean, I didn't have that typical struggling, eating ramen noodles. Like, I had money in my pocket. Because like Alex, I was working a whole lot of jobs, throwing parties, whatever I could do to put money in my pocket. I was doing it legally. And so I was like, right, you got to stress the legal part, right? But it was just funny to me, like, how I got so many questions about it until I just erupted. And that's what I want to go back to that part where I say I'm neutral at times. When I get pushed to a limit, I just erupted, and I was like, "Why am I continually getting questioned about this $20,000?" I was like, "I don't need it. I'm not buying anything. Like, what? Why are you continuing to press me? And I'm continuing to be in these meetings going on for a month about this $20,000." I was like, "Just look at the cameras." And what it boiled down to is they didn't have a camera where the money got stolen, and they end up finding who it was because he started buying expensive dogs and all this other crap. But it was just, I was the number one suspect. And I couldn't think of any other reason why except for the color of my skin. Just...
Do you feel like when the money went missing, do you feel like you already knew that you were about to be a suspect?
Man, listen, when that money went missing, I started turning in stuff that they didn't even ask me to. I swear, like I was turning in, like we had so many phones till it built up. I started bringing stuff back because I knew it was finna come on me. Like I just felt it. And I was like, look, hey, you can look through all this stuff, whatever type of investigation you need, I'll give it to you. I was like, I don't need to be on no type of radars. I'm about to graduate college. I'm not worried about this $20,000, man, at all. So
I think what's interesting is that like these stories and like we recount these things because this is life and this is what it is. It's not like you're not putting on for anything. But I think what this says, like what it says to me is like we talk about how we have to live in multiple realities when we first start dealing with white people. But the truth is, there's more than one reality that we have to live within. There are multiple realities that we are, and oftentimes, you know, we're taken for being simple or, you know, not making wise decisions. But the average person is not trying to manage and balance being five people in five different situations. And so I think that plays a part. Like it's not a part that we talk about often, but that plays a heavy part in why sometimes it's not as easy to break through barriers to have surface level, I mean, more than surface level conversations with us, because we keep things very surface level just because of the fact that we have to carry all of this. If I'm a black man that happens to be in this place at the wrong time, I am undoubtedly the first one accused. And I think that there's something to that. It's something that I don't know. I think that during this lifetime we're tasked with it. I don't see it as something that we will never like. I don't see that piece going anywhere. Switching gears a little bit, I think being in those same spaces where X for you like a heavy like ministry space where you could be interacting with I guess the term evangelical, which just throws me how that term has been snatched and manipulated. But with those people, and then even with the day-to-day interactions of anyone, you know, like I said, my spaces for the most part, I'm just in a lot of black spaces, so I have room to really and with last week with Ahmaud Arbery, and more so like I've known the story since February. I did some reporting on it. I did some writing on it. I felt like I had room to kind of I don't know, feel that a little bit. But I found that I had let my guard down a little bit because when I saw the video, I actually regretted seeing the video. And a lot of times I will watch it because I have to talk about it. I have to share, I have to write something. I have to talk to people about it and their feelings. And I've been in this space where I've had to talk people through their feelings for a long time, whether behind a mic or, you know, holding their hand on a church pew. Like that has been my life, that I've had to do things like that. This time I felt like I had let my guard down, and it's been so long since I watched something like that. I didn't see it. It took me to a really dark place. But there's an expectation sometimes for us to either not say anything at all because it makes people uncomfortable. You know, I think And there also sometimes is a expectation that we should be speaking out and becoming activists behind this crazy behavior that continues. Like it doesn't really. It's like we I don't know. It doesn't. So do you find in the spaces that you're able to truly share your thoughts or feelings or what you feel when yet another Black body is taken by the violence and the vengeance of white people?
I would say
I'm gonna say yes.
Alan, a little something.
Go ahead, Alan.
yeah. I would say Ahmaud Arbery is different for me and what I've seen, and I can only speak of the circle that I've seen. I've seen
Sure.
an outpour from several
everybody.
races, and I was shocked because it's nothing new for the community that we're in, but I was just shocked at the outpour and the rationalization from everybody. Is like, do they finally get it that this wasn't provoked? It was just something that happened to him and that it didn't have to happen. And I think before this one, and I hope, everyone comes and rallies together behind, God forbid if it continues to happen to anybody else's son or daughter, but that they support it. But I would say before that, nah. It was more so just the community, the African American community just banding together, and it sounded like we were complaining. I would see things posted like, why are we still talking about this? And I'm like, we're talking about it because it's still happening. That's why we're still talking about it. So I would say before that, it wasn't. And I mean, Tamir Rice really was a hard one for me because that was tragic. And I identified that because my son was around the same age. So yeah,
Tamir
like that.
Rice was just. They're all just, but Tamir specifically.
Yeah.
My gripe there is, one of the most common things that you hear about Black people is that, oh my gosh, you guys don't age, Black don't crack, Black don't crack. But at the same time, we hear from the same people that 12-year-old Black kids are intimidating because they look like grown men. So which is it? Like, which is it? Is the Black guy cracking? Or
right?
Like, because
right.
I just and you hear those things from these same people. And Tamir Rice, it was impossible for me to swallow that. What about you?
Yeah, man. I this man. My man Rock Major told me one day when I was at Emory, X, you ain't got to make these white people feel comfortable. And at that moment, that freed me to be honest and be real at all times. And so I work right now, I work for a radio station that's predominantly Black. I work also for another nonprofit, and my team is predominantly Black, but we do have white people on it. And so I'm very vocal when stuff happens. So like I was telling people like, yo, can we just keep the family of Ahmaud Arbery in your prayers? Like, you know what I mean? I'm very actively saying like when something's happened, like even again, Breonna Lawrence, who a lot of people ain't talking about. She a paramedic that's in her own house, minding her own business, get ran down and get shot by the police. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the other woman who had that same exact story with her nephew playing video and get gunned down by the police. Like, it's not it. We have to continue to speak about it. And so I cannot call myself a follower of Jesus of Nazareth and not speak to the injustices happening in the world. You know what I mean? I can't speak for everybody else and their faith journey or whatever they want to call it or how they live their life. But for me, there's no way I can sit there and see injustice and not vocalize it or not say anything about it. And like even during quarantine, I've been real quiet because I just ain't really had nothing to say. But when this happened, I was like, yo, I gotta open up my mouth and speak. Cause I feel like a lot of times we're not, like I said before, we're demonized, we're often villainized. But I think white people think that we just targets and beasts and animals and we're not actually human beings. You know what I'm saying? And because of that, like you can't sit there and say you love me and you care about me and I'm cool with you and stuff like that, but you don't speak up in times of like Mother's Day or in your churches or in your family groups and your group chats, you're not sitting there bringing this up, you're not sitting there vocalizing or having an issue with this. Like, well, you can't say you love me and you don't rock with this. Like, nah, that's not gonna fly with me. And so I make myself very vocal, very active. I try to be myself 100% of the times. Like, and you brought up a point earlier about like code switching, having to be 5 different people. Like, I try to be myself all the time because I don't have time to be sitting there switching up for you. You know what I mean? I know that we are groomed to have to code switch, but I just feel like we should be, if our counterparts, whether it's white, Asian, Hispanic, or whatever like that, can come to a space, a workplace, a function, and be their whole self, we should be able to be the same way. And although society may not sit there and view it that way, society is never going to change if we don't speak up and we don't try to maneuver and change the space.
I think in that same vein, it's not that I disagree at all. I think I have told myself, and I tell myself regularly, because I truly believe this, that while we are here trying to combat it and make people understand and see our side and see our perspective and see this and feel this and understand this, it's more important for me that and has not always been this way, that we start to understand each other first, because I think racism is a white people problem. Mm-hmm. I think that in so many ways that we can sit here and talk about ways to combat it, but this is really not my problem. This is a problem for Jim and his racist with his racist father and Brittany and whoever else. And I'm just saying asinine names, but honestly, this is not that problem specifically. That's not Karen. It's Karen's problem. It's not our problem, but it is often our pain. I think a question that I would ask, like, do we really? What is the way? Should we continue to have these conversations across the aisle? And how should we empower those of us that are willing to have those conversations? How do we, if that's our place, how do we empower people, our people, to be more willing to have those conversations? Or is there some other action that we need to take amongst each other? Because is time out? Is it time out for conversation? It may be. It may just be time for action, not necessarily reaction, but just some type of different action. Alan, go ahead.
I think it's 2 parts to it, man. Man, it's tough. But I would say on one end, for me, I would say I almost kind of disagree with saying that it's just a white person's problem. And the only reason I say that is because we got to do some self-healing within. And I say that because we can't continue to complain with no action. Right. If we just complain with no action, this will continue in our kids' lives and their kids' lives. Like, it's almost like we got to strategize in these times. And I hate that we have to do that, because we shouldn't even have to be in this situation in general. Like, we should just be able to be ourselves and walk outside and don't have to worry about getting pulled over, or embrace the culture that everybody wants and loves about us. And just, we can do it, besides it being like just taken from us and marketed. But I kind of disagree with saying it's just a white people's problem, because I don't think we'll get all the solutions if we just say y'all got to fix it.
Sure, I wouldn't say that it's a problem that white people have to fix.
Yeah,
I would probably say that it's a problem that we have to collectively work on. I think that there's room for us to make changes and maybe even be more embracing to white people that are willing to understand. And so I think we have responsibility there. But when it comes down to the problem of racism, when it comes to, because I was speaking with a guest of mine like a month ago, and she made the statement that when you find solutions for the less fortunate and the marginalized and the people that are less, that automatically covers everybody else. When you seek to find solutions that work whether it's a living wage or healthcare or housing or whatever it is, when you seek to find solutions for people that are less than or marginalized or kept down because of the color of their skin, those solutions that you put in place are always going to encompass the people that are not affected in that way. So by that same token, a lot of times things stay the way that they are because there's fear, and fear kind of motivates their actions, or things have been this way for so long. Why can't y'all just be okay with it? And I think in that sense, that's a problem that they have to deal with. I don't know that I can do anything about that mentality, but I would agree with you that there's work to be done with us deciding to change our or some of our actions and our reactions as well.
Facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to. We got to keep doing it. We got to. I don't want to. I feel you, Alan, bro. But we got to. It's hard because it feel like, yo, why do I gotta keep educating you on your BS? Like, I shouldn't have to. Like, you're grown. You know what I mean? Yeah. Deal with your work through your issues. I think, but when I look at the past, you know what I'm saying? When I look at Martin Luther King had to get there and talk to Lyndon Johnson in order to get the Civil Rights Bill passed. Civil Rights Act passed. You know what I mean? If he wasn't up there at the president's spot, if he wasn't sitting there talking to him, then we probably wouldn't have the Civil Rights Act, period. We would, and so we have to keep reaching out. We got to keep talking. We got to keep making ourselves available for education and recognizing the allies that we do have in our corner, the ones that do feel some sense of pain, the ones that do want to see a change, the ones that are actually speaking up. We got to give them their props too. But no, it's not our responsibility to keep dropping these jewels and gems on them and then finally getting the aha moment. But if we want to see progress occur, then sometimes we got to take the road less traveled. You know what I mean? We got to be the bigger person.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that means we got to swallow our pride, unfortunately. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I think I agree with that. I think both perspectives. I actually agree with you both. My question, and I wonder, how do we have these conversations with the fed up? Because I think, Alan, to your point, in this sense, it's our problem. But we have to empower each other. We have to be those voices that are willing to go talk to our other brothers and being like, bro, look, I know you're fed up. I know that you feel like you can't take any more of this, or you're not willing to take any more of this. But here's where we can start to change things and where we can come together. How do we even begin to have these conversations in some of these circles that we are in?
I think it starts with just get behind the people that are doing the work. Just as simple as that, because I know in our community, a lot of times, let's start back historically. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and any prominent leader during that time had backing. It was a bunch of groups, like you had NLCC. Yeah, you know what I meant. I'm sorry,
yeah.
But you had all these different
SLCC,
groups. There you go,
all
right? The alphabets. But we had all these different groups, but they formed into one funnel. And I think we have a problem with that now. Like, we'll social media talk all day, but it's people out here that are actually doing work, and we should be behind them. And that is part of the problem, I think, is why these conversations that we're having get lost in translation, because there's not a punch behind it. It's just a bunch of scattered talk. Back then, they had a punch with less technology. I mean, they was putting messages out on tapes, like going to different towns, having speeches, and people showed up. There's people that won't even go to a meeting to improve your community where somebody was just killed to make an impact. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different now because everybody's comfortable. And I don't know if it was the physical racism back then that united everybody, but just because it's not always in your face where somebody's spitting on you or slapping you or calling you out your name doesn't mean that it's not going on. So I think we gotta identify and follow and support the people that are out there doing the work. And I actively look for those things, and I've dedicated money and time to causes that I'm behind. But we all got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you also got to recognize that you don't have to agree on everything with the movement. You know what I mean? I think that's this statement or this topic is very multi-layered, right? Because at one point you're like, yo, we ain't all got to agree to keep it moving. Like, like, look, methodology, whatever, but we need to get behind the cause. But then it's like, well, what's the agenda? The same issue we're facing with like the presidential debates. Like, what's the black agenda? What do we care about? What is it that we're gonna all agree to say this is what we need to fix? You know what I mean? Everybody want to be king, don't nobody want to be an Indian. Everybody want to be chief, but don't nobody want to be Indian natives, whatever you want to call them. Like, don't nobody want to follow. Everybody want to lead. And so I think that we got to figure out what is it that we rallying behind. Is it just police brutality? Is it economic empowerment? You know what I'm saying? Is it equality amongst the races? What is it? And know that even if you got a bad perspective or you don't agree, like, you know what I'm saying? You're right. There are people out there on the front line. Everybody ain't just Twitter fingers. You know what I'm saying? Right. There are people out there actually risking their lives. They're reporting. They're on the front lines. They're advocating. You know what I'm saying? And we need to get behind them. We need to support them, whether we like them or not. And I think that's the part about our community, the inner work and the soul healing that needs to be done. Because if I can't agree with you or I don't like the way you're doing it, then I automatically shun you, shame you, or disrespect you and don't even support you. It's like, yo, I ain't got to agree with every leader out there. You know what I mean? I could think they a trash individual, but recognize what they doing for our people and say, look, you know what I'm saying? We with it. Malcolm and Martin had two different ideologies. They had two different methodologies, but they both was about the same business, and they was both able to say, you know what? You know what I mean? At some point, their ideals actually became to come more in alignment with each other. Like, and I think that's what happens. But we got to give ourselves freedom to be able to do that. I think, which is difficult. It ain't easy. I think it's a tension, but we gotta
say. And I think the truth is, not only do we not always have to agree, the truth is we will not always agree.
Right.
That's fine. Mm-hmm. What we can agree on is that this specific thing needs to change. We can agree on that we don't need to be shot senselessly, and not because justice is not the fact that they finally arrested these people that came after Ahmaud, but it's justice would be Ahmaud still being here with us. Like, I don't think. So there's time out for that. We can agree on things like that, and what we agree on, we have to move forward on. Right. And part of that moving forward is much more than just saying what we think about a situation or feel about a situation on the social media platform. It goes so much further than that. There's so many people that we have to hold responsible, but we also have to be retaught so many ways the power that we have. Like, we don't really vote in our own communities. And Alan, you talked about people don't go to community meetings. You're not even going to see what rules they're putting in place in your neighborhood. If you're living in these places and maybe you don't live in a plantation neighborhood, but there's one next door and it's named that. You should be at these HOA meetings, and you should be at these association meetings, and you should be in there influencing the policy. And visibility is key. I think the conversation starts to change once you show up. When you're there, it's always, it's a different conversation when you walk in the room as a Black man. The conversation is bound to change. There's no way. And and I still have, ways that I just feel like you have to send messages subliminally as well. Like, each one teach one. I find myself and like I said, I'm not in a lot of spaces that are not Black, and it's mostly just because of where I work, how I work, and then when I'm not working, I'm with my friends, so that it is what it is. But if I do find myself mostly in the South, and if I happen to be in an elevator with a white woman, I'll lose it. I'll just go completely berserk. I'll just start pressing all the buttons, screaming, losing my mind, and she will just lose her complete composure. Like, is everything okay? Everything? And I'll just wait. I will get off on the next floor, and breathe. And I'm like, I just needed to get out. I cannot be alone in an elevator with you. Could you imagine what would happen if I made it to the bottom floor and you accused me of something? And I've done that a couple times, and I'm not recommending people go, but I've done that. That's a small each one teach one for me, because as I say that to her and the elevator door closes, she's so stunned that she didn't even have time to be frightened that she was alone in the elevator with me. And I just have to believe. I don't have any confirmation. I can't confirm whether or not, I haven't done a study. But I just believe that after that, her actions change. Now she realizes what she's doing when she gets in the elevator with the black man. And instead of clenching her purse and heading to the side of the elevator, now she's like looking like, are they looking at her sideways? Because you just never know. And that's a really abrasive way to approach it. But I think visibility matters. That goes back to me saying that. I think when you can't always, I'm not in the spaces to bring awareness to white people. I'm also not in the spaces to coax white people. So when I do have white people reach out to me, one of the most sobering things for me, like when the whole Black Lives Matter movement started, and my experience is much different than it was when I was 16. I'm a grown black man. So I have black man experiences, and I'm speaking out on it. And some of my white classmates from that day start responding, and they are responding basically the basis, because I think a lot of people look at All Lives Matter and they're like, this is just some ploy to distract from the truth. But they really came from a truthful, well, Alex, you and I, we would avoid Duluth police for the same reason. And they go back to this up, like, it wasn't race, it was class in that environment. So they were literally telling me, Alex, that would never happen to you. And they're saying this in public forums, like where I'm writing pieces and you see them show up. Alex, well, this would never happen to you. And I'm like, what? You really think that? And you don't know that they think this way until you bring the conversation. Like we have to be visible in those conversations and in those spaces. And that's the other side of it, not really being our problem, but without us, it will never be solved. The thinking for a lot of them was, I'm not speaking on Trayvon or Michael Brown or Alton Sterling, or Philando Castile. I'm not speaking on any of these people, because I had a black friend, and and that would never happen to Alex, and that's their frame of reference, because after high school they don't have anymore. So that's what they know. And so everybody doesn't have that experience, but a lot of them have experiences where they've told themselves like this isn't really happening. And I think visibility of Ahmaud changed that for a lot of them, because a lot of them, no matter what they were throwing out there, oh, he has a criminal record, or he was trespassing. Now the person that owned the house has come out, he wasn't trespassing. And all these people put themselves in the minds in the space of, when I'm out jogging or I'm at the outtakes walk, I see a new home, under development, I walk in there. And so many people could feel that. That's why it's different. And I think that just to echo what you gentlemen were saying, I think that the visibility is important. Us having a voice in that space is important, and us speaking that truth to our small influence, our small influence of people. It's important for us to give that credence to that. My last question for you guys before we wrap. There are tons of young men that I believe, and I hope, and I know that will see these conversations and see this series, and they don't, much like your son, Alan, they're either shielded from some of this trauma, but based on what they've read, a lot of these kids are living in a real different reality. Like, I think we're generally the same age. So when we're growing up, we're reading historically about what happened. Yeah. And then, of course, we know the history that we were taught, and then we know the Black history that we were getting in other places, like what was really going down. But you couldn't have told me in 2005, when I was 18 and I headed to college, that we were definitely in a post-racial era. In 2005, you couldn't have told me that Barack Obama was going to happen. You also couldn't have told me that we would have this resurgence of white power in a vocal, abrasive, and almost dangerous way. So now these kids are living in that, and when they see this, oftentimes they know their first thought is to do some research and see what people are saying. And when they look to find out what people are saying, I hope they come across this. What would you tell a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old Black boy that's seeing this repeatedly and they're also seeing a mod? That it's fair for us to talk about how there's been a different reaction, but the why is also important. What would you say to those boys that are seeing this, or say advice, encouragement, anything you would have for somebody in that age range? X, you can go first.
Man, any young person I run into, I try to just encourage them and tell them like, yo, it's real out here, and yes, you need to make sure you're staying active and vigilant about how you move. You need to be wise as a serpent, but gentle as a dove. I mean, you need to make sure that you know that your creator is always watching over you and protecting you regardless. But to be smart, you know what I mean? Be smart, man. Like, here's the thing: we can hope and strive and do our best to change the society, but the society is what it is. You know what I'm saying? People are going to look at you any type of way. So you got an option. You could either lean into the fear and try to perpetrate or change up and do all this stuff, or you could be yourself and make sure that your actions are making you a man of integrity, a man of character, a man of valor, a man that is to be respected, and a man that, you know, people can look up to. You should be a leader. And I that's what I try to instill in all the youth that I work with, that I encounter, because that doesn't mean that even and also to be honest with them and say, like, you could do everything right. You could do everything right. You could be doing nothing wrong and stuff still can come for you. That doesn't mean that you live in fear. That just means that you be aware. You know, be aware that this stuff is going on. And so I think those are the things I encourage, because I'm raising a son and a daughter. You know what I'm saying? So I think for me, I try to instill in them who they are. I try to let them know their identity, let them know that daddy loves them. But also, like, look, people are not, they don't see you the same. You're different, and that's okay. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the biggest things. Like, it's okay to be different. It's okay to be weird. It's okay for people to look at you different, because you are different. You're not like everybody else. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? So
I hear it. I appreciate it.
That's for me.
Thank you. Alan.
Yeah, it's the same message I tell my son. And I've mentored people, kids in suburban areas to hoods to all different type of backgrounds. And the thing I tell them is be the change that you want to see. It's just that simple, because it's going to hit different for everybody. My background made me a certain way, so I'm being the change that I want to see for the next generation. But if I was raised overseas or in New York or in Chicago, in Louisiana or Mississippi, my vision would be different. So you just got to be that change that you want to see. And another thing I always tell kids is conversation breaks barriers. If you're able to have a conversation with somebody, have it. Now, you're not always going to reach that person, but it's better than doing nothing. You'd be surprised at the reactions you can get just by having a conversation. What we're doing here, it may reach somebody because of the conversation. If you talk, if I could go back and talk to that Asian police officer or the white police officer that pulled me over and be like, look, man, I turned out to be nothing like you thought I would be. It's a conversation. It's a connection piece, because the more you peel back, you may have something in common with that person, but you might not. But we got to do that amongst ourselves, and we got to do that amongst other races. But hands down, be the change you want to see.
Absolutely. There's definitely room for that. And I think conversation is always a game changer. Yeah. I think I believe that. I believe that strongly. So I totally agree with that. I think that it not only breaks barriers, but it opens eyes. And people make their assumptions, which is why this conversation was so important. You hit the point, right? The nail on the head. Like, your experience and where you are from has shaped a lot of the way that you think and act and move. And where you're from admits the experiences that you've had. Right. And I think a lot of times the focus of this series was really, we are not all from the same place. We have similar experiences, and that doesn't make us similar. The similar experiences don't make us similar. The lived experience is what makes us similar, and we're able to relate in those ways. And I think it's important that we continue to get that out. I can't express how grateful I am that you guys participated in this, and we were just able to just kind of share openly. And I know that this will reach who it's intended to reach, and that's my goal. Like, I think I wasn't really, I had no plans for this to be some big show. When I talked to my team about it, I'm like, this is just something that needs to happen. I've been doing this a long time, and I've never had this conversation in this way with these people. And I've had thousands of conversations at this point, just with people about things that they think are important. And I don't know what is more important than, like, for me, life. And so
right.
I thank you guys for joining me. I want you guys to talk just a little bit about what you're doing, how people can get in touch with you and your organization that you're working with, if that's possible. So we can start with you, Alan. We'll wrap with you, and then we'll.
Cool. So if you want to get in contact with me, you can follow me on social media at Professor X. That's PROFEZZORX. You can find, I have a podcast called Crowns Up Podcast. It talks about hip hop, faith, and culture. If you want, we dive into similar conversations. You can follow us on all social media platforms, as well as on all the streaming sites at Crowns Up Podcast, or CROWNSUPPOD. Hit me up either anyway. If you trying to do some community service, if you trying to give back, I got connections with everybody. And also, we need more Black people on the bone marrow registry. So please go to bethematchatl.org. We could definitely use some help getting some more Black people, because we only have a 23% of finding a match, and our blood is the cure to a lot of diseases such as sickle cell and blood cancers and all different types of stuff. So go to bethematchatl.org for more information on that. And anything else, just holler at me. We got it popping in. I just want to say thank you, Alex, for bringing this conversation to light, giving us a platform to be able to touch on this stuff, because it's essential, it's necessary. And you're doing a great job, man. So thank you so much for it.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you, X, and thanks for coming through. Alan, tell us a little bit about your organization and how people can keep up with it.
Yeah. Similar to X, we are on Facebook, Instagram. It's called Knowledge Foundation Inc., and it's the phonetic spelling of it, NOLIJ Foundation Inc. We focus on giving out scholarships, financial literacy. We're building something right now to have online tutor sessions. So you can follow us on Instagram, Knowledge is Power. We're on Facebook at Knowledge Foundation Inc. One of the things we're doing right now is organizing a virtual run to give school supplies for the upcoming school and summer school that a lot of the communities that don't have the financial means, they will need that, especially with all of the COVID-19 taking financial income out of the households. We're going to need that. And so you can go to our website, knowledgefoundationinc.org, and see all the information there. Anything else you guys are a part of, you need help with anything, I'm always here to help, open minds with everything. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Professor X, for all the knowledge y'all done kick. I'm inspired.
No, absolutely. We're gonna take my team and I will put your information both packaged with this part of the series, also on our social media, and we'll put it out there so that people can connect. And again, brothers, thank you so much for coming through and being a part of this. It's life-changing, and I really hope that it's used as a tool to do just that. The conversation continues. This series, part 5, this concludes it. But you can watch it in its entirety. in the Boss FM Radio app. It's available in your app store. Just click shows, Unmuted Nation, click watch. You can watch, listen. You can go back and listen to this. You can share it if you're interested in expanding this conversation in your circle, your community, your church group, your school, your wherever, your friends, the brunch table, I don't care. Wherever you're having the conversation, this is useful. If you want to use it, tap into it. We would appreciate it. I got to thank my team for standing behind this and making this possible. And of course, we continue with more. So stay with Unmuted Nation, more on Boss FM Talk. I'm Alex Haynes, and that's a wrap for Black Men Hear Me.